Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Stephanie and today is the last day of 2024. So I put together a list of 24 things that I've learned or come to accept or come to realize or have felt and recognized in this last year. So here are 24 things that I've learned in 2024. I have the list all pulled up here on my phone of all the things that I've thought of. They're in no particular order, and honestly, I don't think there's any sort of organization about this other than the fact that they all came to my brain. So let's do this. So the first one is sometimes you have to let go even when other people don't understand, even if you yourself don't understand. It can sometimes lead to finding yourself. So what I mean by this is sometimes things are really hard to let go of. That could be relationships, whether romantic or platonic. That could be a job. That could be hobbies that you have or decisions that you've made or places that you live. Whatever it is, there's so many options of things that we hold on to. That letting go of them, even if other people don't agree with your decision, but letting go can sometimes lead you to yourself, back to yourself. Because some things hold us back, and some things keep us in a place that is no longer beneficial for us, even if it was a few months ago, a few years ago, etc. So know that letting go is sometimes what brings you right back home to yourself. The next one is your deepest fears can sometimes unlock your greatest desires. And what I mean by this, and what I have in my brain when I'm saying this and digesting this, is sometimes what we fear so much is what leads us to, or unlocks, or brings us to the place of what we so deeply crave. So for me, vulnerability is something that's scary and overwhelming, but that vulnerability that I fear leads me to what I deeply crave, which is deep and meaningful connections with people. And I can't have those connections with people unless I'm vulnerable. So sometimes tackling those fears, the things that feel overwhelming to us, are exactly what brings us to the place that we want to be. So that brings me to my next point about connection, is deep and meaningful connection with people who meet you where you're at, are out there, and you are worthy of them. I don't know if there's much more to say other than that, is that there are people who connect with you, and there's people who are going to love you for you and who are going to show up for you, and you can show up for them, and you are worthy of those connections, and you are worthy of that type of love and those types of relationships. If you just keep putting yourself out there authentically and showing up authentically and having the courage to step into places that feel right for you, you will find them, and they are out there. And I've totally stepped into that in this last year, and it's felt really, really good to have those really deep and meaningful connections. Just because I did what I just talked about, was I opened up and I had some vulnerability. So the next thing that I have learned is doing things that are extremely uncomfortable leads to tremendous growth and sometimes even pride. So for me this year, I have put myself in so many uncomfortable positions. I've done so many big things. Like at the beginning of this year, I started teaching yoga, and I had to go through an audition in order to even teach yoga, which was absolutely terrifying. And now I'm teaching, and I absolutely love it, and it's led to so much growth and understanding of myself and other people, and sharing yoga. And I also got a promotion at work this year, and that put me into more of a leadership role that was absolutely terrifying. And because of that, I had so much growth in my job and my role, and I have a lot more confidence in myself and my ability to do my role. And I've also had a lot of growth because I've stepped into places that were uncomfortable when it came to speaking about my boundaries and my relation to other people in my life, and what I'm willing to accept and not accept, and that has led to a different type of growth as well, with communicating and being honest and showing up as my most authentic self. And so that's been really, really cool. And I do have a lot of pride in myself. I'm so proud of myself from where I started to where I am now. So the next thing is something that I have come to when thinking about my goals for this coming year. And when I say goals, I use that term pretty loosely, but this next thing that I've learned is shaping what my 25 is gonna look like. But it's, you can be imperfect and messy and still be a good person. So even when I'm imperfect, even when I mess up, even when I don't do things the way I expect to do them, I'm still a good person. I'm still good. I'm still whole. I'm still enough. I'm still worthy of love and goodness and everything that comes to me, even when I'm imperfect and even when I'm messy. The next is self-compassion is difficult, but makes everything else easier. I have done so much work this year on finding compassion for myself and stepping into the compassion and the kindness towards myself. I do so much of that for others and trying to show up compassionately for others, but I was subtracting myself from that action. It was difficult, and it still is difficult, to step into that and be that for myself. However, when I'm compassionate towards myself and towards the things that come up for me, emotions, actions, things that I do that maybe I'm not proud of, or mistakes I've made, it makes moving through that and flowing through life a lot easier, because I can look at it with the perspective and the lens of kindness and removing judgment from it and allowing myself to be human in it. So me finding my self-compassion is what has led to handling things and flowing through life a lot easier. This one is sometimes hard to hear, and it might sound like common sense and might seem straightforward. However, it's something that I've really come to terms with this year, and it's that you don't have to stay in places where you are disrespected or underappreciated. You can leave. And that sounds simple and straightforward when we just talk about it in terms of words. And from the outside, it seems simple to say, you can leave. It's not always simple to just get up and leave, whether that's a relationship, a job, etc. You have the capability, you have the capacity, you have the strength, you have everything within you that you need in order to advocate for yourself. And if you give yourself permission, you can walk away. You can walk away from places where you are not respected, you are not held to your highest degree and level of worthiness. And if you're not being appreciated, you can walk away too. And you can also speak up for yourself. So maybe it's not even about walking away, but it's about speaking up for yourself. You are capable of doing that, and that's something that I've really stepped into and leaned into and feel good about. This one has hit me, but about halfway through the year I experienced some really difficult emotions that I didn't want to be feeling, but that's what has led me to this thing that I've learned. And it's that sometimes acknowledging feelings and emotions is all you need to do to release them from controlling you. So I'm not saying that acknowledging them means you're getting rid of them, and I'm not saying that acknowledging them makes it easier, because sometimes it doesn't make it easier, but it helps you step into that driver's seat of letting go of control, or rather letting go of the control that emotion has over you. Sometimes it's just acknowledging, I am feeling such and such a way. you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling it in your body, you're feeling kind of stuck, and maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger. But sometimes just acknowledging, I have anxiety, I have anger, I have fear, I have whatever fill in the blank thing, and separating it from you and your being is what allows you to break that control, the reins that it has on you. That leads me to my next point, and the next thing is sometimes there aren't reasons for why things happen. Things happen and you can handle it and still be okay without knowing the why. So you might be feeling angry, you might be feeling anxious, you might be feeling all of those things, and sometimes we don't know why, and sometimes we never will know why. You will still be okay and you can still handle it without knowing why, because you've acknowledged it and you've recognized it, and here you are feeling it. And that's the most human thing you can do, is to feel it and to sit with it and to sit in it knowing that you are going to be okay, and it's okay to feel what you are feeling. The next one is something that I've been leaning into for a bit more than 2024, but is something that I feel really strongly about because I'm just deep into it right now, and it's that listen to your intuition, and the more you listen, the more you will hear it. So I've really been leaning into this idea of, what is my gut saying? What is my heart saying? What is my mind saying? But what is my gut saying? And the more I lean into it, and the more I recognize it, and I acknowledge it, and I talk back to it, and I talk with it, and I follow through on actions based in it, the more I start to hear it, and the more I trust it. And there's something really cool about the ability to listen to what your body is saying and then also trust in it and form action around that. It's building this relationship with yourself, and that has been something I've really been building over this last year, is my ability to trust myself and to lean into that intuition and to lean into all those little whispers that I hear from my body. So this last year, I set a word for each of my years, an intention, and my word for this last year was creativity. And so it was really about leaning into my creativity and what that meant for me. And so that's where this one really steps in for me, is that there is creativity in more action than you first suspect. Anything can be creative and expressive if you approach it with an open mind and curiosity. I tried to find creativity in almost every task that I had this year. How could I be creative? And it led to this idea that creativity is honestly a mindset, and it's how open-minded you choose to approach a situation and how curious you are about the situation. And the creativity steps in when you start thinking about, maybe it's a problem you need to solve. What are all the ways you can solve it? Or maybe it's an activity or a hobby you've always wanted to do that's not necessarily inherently creative. But if you're creating, if you're making, if you're sharing, that's creativity at the end of the day. I even had this revelation that reading is creative. And you might be like, what the heck, reading is not creative, you're just reading words on a page. But I realized that by reading words on a page, my brain was consistently creating imagery and action and movement within my imagination. And that was so creative because I was taking these words of someone else and knitting them into this really beautiful imagery, or creating different inflections in people's voices as I was reading the words on the page. And that was really cool to be able to recognize that, oh, this is super, super creative to be able to sit in this. And I've really, really enjoyed reading this year. And I've kind of stepped into new genres, and that's been really cool to be able to do that. I'm just gonna say this one straight up, and I don't have much more to say other than vulnerability can be safe. You can be safe in your vulnerability. It's not always scary, and it's not always harmful. You can be safe in it. This one I had the revelation when I was so stressed about work and about all these things I had going on and trying to juggle it all and do it all and all of this. But my realization, and this does not negate being prepared, this does not negate the feelings of maybe anxiety or restlessness or nervousness. However, this is what I came to terms with, is that if it's out of your control, it's one less thing on your to-do list. I couldn't control so many things at work. I couldn't control other people, I couldn't control timelines, I couldn't control all these things. But I realized by not being able to control it, I didn't have to write it on my to-do list. It was one less thing I needed to do or get done at work before I took time off, before a big project, before the weekend, before fill in the blank thing. I didn't have to add that to my to-do list because I couldn't control it and it wasn't in my hands. I thought that was like really awesome, and I continue to have to remind myself of that because I love when things are in my control. So the ability or my ability to even come to terms with this idea is huge, and it's felt really big for me. This one's more recent for me, and I'm actually quite excited about this one because I think I'm going to lean more into it. It's that actions based in your childhood passions and interests feel really good and honest. I have found that when I lean into things that I liked as a child, I feel just really authentic. And I think it's because as a child, you choose to do things not based on what other people are saying or doing or thinking about you. You're just doing it because it brings you joy or it interests you or whatever. And so now as an adult, as I lean into some of those things, I'm recognizing how just pure those things feel. And that purity and that clarity are really comforting to me. And so I keep going back to those things that brought me joy as a child, and that's something really cool. And I know that I can continue to come back to that and continue to move through life with those things. This next one comes from something that has really challenged me in the past. And it's that birthdays don't always have to be sad. They can also be celebrated. And I get to age. I don't have to. I get to. I get to age. I get to be a year older. In the last handful of years, I don't even know the last time that I have felt truly excited for my birthday. Usually it fills me with a lot of dread and fear and overwhelm. However, this year, I actually celebrated it, and it felt good to celebrate. Did feelings of fear and stress and overwhelm still come up? Absolutely. Those absolutely still came up. And I still celebrated. And I leaned into the things that felt good. And I honored myself. So that was really, really cool. That was so cool to be at that place. And I don't know if I'm going to be at that place next year or the year after or in the next coming years or whatever. I don't know. I can't predict that. But I can say that that's one thing I learned this year, is that I can celebrate. And they don't always have to be sad. And it's okay to be happy on it too. When I started to reflect on all the different things in this year and where I'm at and how things have gone and all the things I've accomplished or all the challenges and hurdles that I've run into, I had the realization and I came to the conclusion that my younger self would be so proud of me and so surprised at where I'm at. I don't think that my younger self would have been able to predict where I am now, or to predict I would feel the way that I feel, or to even be able to imagine my ability to experience life to the degree that I'm experiencing it. I think little Stephanie would be really, really proud, and that's so cool. Next, boundaries can be difficult to set, yet you are capable of setting them, And it also feels good to respect your own boundaries, even when unexpected emotions come up. So I've always known that boundaries are good, you can set them, whatever. I can recognize that, I can see that, I can feel that, I can acknowledge that, and setting them is hard. And I think that this year is the first year that I've really leaned into, stepped into, and allowed myself to set boundaries to a degree that has impact. But this year has been one where I set firm boundaries, and I've also allowed myself to follow through on the boundaries in which I have set. So that has felt hard, so hard. And it has been extremely rewarding, and it feels good. And other emotions have come up, like the sadness and the fear of the unknown, and coping with maybe a little bit of guilt and shame surrounding that and my impact on other people. However, I set those boundaries and I did that, and it's something that I really learned this year is setting those boundaries is important for me and my well-being, and I'm totally capable of doing it. The next thing that I've learned this year or recognized is that showing up for others feels good, and showing up for yourself feels good too. I feel like I have shown up for people in a way that I never allowed myself to show up for people before. I feel so present in my relationships and my connections with people. I feel so tuned in because I show up for myself. I have continually shown up for myself, and as a result, I'm able to show up for other people. And that's something I've always been really hard on myself for. And so to be able to see myself do that is really cool and really, really rewarding. The next one is that sometimes goals and desires and beliefs from your past no longer feel right. And it's okay to release those and reassess what feels right. I have gone through so many changes in the last 4 years, let alone the last year and a half. So much has happened in my life, and so many things have changed and adjusted and shifted. And I like the direction I'm going. It feels good and it feels right. However, as a result of that, there are belief systems and things that I used to desire that no longer serve me. And I have found that I've had to shed some of those, and it's okay to do that. It's hard, and it's also okay to do that. This one kind of goes along with that idea of things and like belief systems from my past, and it's kind of funny, but it's that I can actually cook and I can do it well, and I like cooking for other people. Believe it or not, I like it. There is something I really enjoy about being able to show up for people by providing food. It makes me feel like I can take care of people, and it makes me feel like I can show up for people and provide a meaningful contribution to their life in a way that maybe not everyone can. And I have done so much cooking this year, whether I set out to do that or not, but I kind of learned more about cooking and how to cook, and I got a little bit more adventurous, which has been really cool, and it's making me kind of find this newfound appreciation for food and interest in food. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a master chef. However, I really enjoy cooking for other people and providing for people in that way. It brings me a lot of joy. And to that note, and when I say that, I like making things from scratch. One example of that is I was asked to bring certain things for a bachelorette party that I went to. It was like a whole weekend thing. and I was bringing salad stuff, and I was like, I'm not about to buy bottles of dressing. So I made a homemade ranch dressing and a homemade vinaigrette, and that made me feel really good. And I've made soups for people, and I have different desserts for people, and just certain different meals for people. And that's felt really good, and I don't know, I just really love that, and there's something really heartwarming. It's felt creative. To go back to that. The next one is wearing clothes I like for me feels better than dressing for others. I could have told you that years ago. However, this year is the first year I actually stepped into action surrounding that thought, which is why I wrote it down, is that I'm choosing to show up in a way that feels expressive to myself, regardless of what other people are going to say about it. Before, I used to dress a lot for other people, and now I just dress for me and what I like for whatever situation, and I'm getting a little bit more creative in that, and that's been really, really fun. Next is I'm capable of achieving lifelong goals. One of my lifelong goals has been to learn to play guitar. It's just something I've always been drawn to since I was a child, and I tried learning as a kid, and it was so frustrating. And now in this last year, I've been learning to play guitar, and it's been so rewarding, and it feels like I'm honoring my most authentic self. So that's been really, really awesome. Sometimes there is no right decision. There just is a decision. And sometimes both options are good options. We are constantly faced with decisions that we have to make all of the time. And I have found that I overthink so much. I have this level of depth of thought that sometimes is both my greatest strength and my greatest weakness. I've come to the realization that sometimes when I'm presented with two options, both options are going to serve me, just in different ways. And so therefore there is not a right decision, there just is a decision. And that can sometimes take some of the weight off of it, and sometimes it does not take the weight off of it, and you just have to make a decision, live with it. This last one is something I've come to in the last month. So I'm not negating anything that has happened in all 12 months. So in December, beginning of December, I really have been working on this, and I heard a term surrounding what I'm about to share, and it just put it into a new perspective for me. But it's allow yourself to experience the spectrum of your humanity, even the anger, the ecstatic joy, the deep grief, and everything in between. So I heard the term that humanity, there's the spectrum of your humanity. There are the highs, the lows, and everything in between. There's so much power in allowing yourself to experience the entire spectrum of your humanity. Sometimes it's hard to feel those things, to feel especially the really low lows. And this year I felt a lot of grief and sadness, and whether I like to admit it or not, anger. I've also felt really high highs of ecstatic joy, just so much joy, so much peace and pleasure. But those are all just on a spectrum, and we get to experience all of them. And so allowing yourself to just experience that entire spectrum, and I'm really looking forward to stepping into that as we move into the new year. Those are the 24 things that I have learned in 2024. I've felt so just proud of myself this year, and I've learned so much. I've had so much growth in this last year, and I just really wanted to share that. So if you have learned anything this year, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to have a conversation about it. I'm proud of you too for everything that you've learned and accomplished and done or sat with. Just know that you're so loved, that you are whole and you are enough just as you are.